When my father died, people said the right words. He was a good man. He'll be missed. He left a legacy. But all I heard was the silence he left behind. I stood at the edge of his grave in a black dress that wasn't mine. It was borrowed, like everything else in my life now. The ground was wet from the morning rain, the air heavy with the smell of lilies. Family members I barely recognized circled me with pity in their eyes, whispering condolences they'd forget the moment they walked away. Beside me, my stepmother, Vivian, was a vision of practiced grief. She clutched a silk handkerchief to her cheek, her sobs sharp and rehearsed. Her tears looked perfect, like everything else about her. The widow in black, the grieving wife. She leaned closer, her perfume too strong, her whisper colder than the rain. "Don't linger, it's unseemly." I froze. My father hadn't been in the ground 5 minutes, and she was already worried about appearances. The priest's voice droned on, reading prayers that blurred together. My chest ached, but not just from loss, from anger. Because as I looked at Vivian, I realized something. She wasn't grieving my father. She was already calculating. When the service ended, people gathered at the house. Our house, or at least, it used to be. The home I'd grown up in, the one with the attic where I hid as a child, the garden my father taught me to tend. Vivian floated through the rooms, accepting condolences, greeting guests like she was hosting a gala rather than a wake. I sat in the corner, forgotten. That's when I overheard her. "She left college to care for him, poor thing," one guest murmured. Vivian's voice, low but sharp, replied, "She won't be here long." This house is mine now. Mine. The word clanged in my head like a hammer. I tightened my grip on my father's watch, the one thing she hadn't taken from me, yet. That night, after everyone had left, I stood alone in the hallway. The shadows stretched long, the silence thick. My father was gone. Vivian was already erasing me, but I promised myself, standing there with my back against the cold wall, she wouldn't win. She thought she had buried my father and everything he left behind. She had no idea that he left something for me too, and when I found it, it would be the key to her downfall. The morning after the funeral, I walk up the front steps with a grocery bag of candles and soup, the kind of things you bring to a house in mourning. The key turns halfway, then stops. I try again. Metal grinds. The lock doesn't give. Vivian has changed it, overnight. I knock, polite at first, then harder. Curtains shift in the front room. She makes me wait long enough to taste the humiliation before she opens the door a crack. Her lipstick is perfect. Her eyes are dry. "Yes," she says, like I'm a stranger selling magazines. "My key doesn't work." "It won't," she answers. She widens the door just enough so I can see the stack of my boxes in the foyer, labels scrawled in my handwriting, packing tape torn, lids popped. I took the liberty of gathering your things. "My things," I repeat, as if I need to hear the words to believe them. "This is my home." Her smile is soft and razor thin. "Darling, it was your father's home, and now it's mine." A pulse beats in my throat. He wouldn't have wanted... She glances at the grandfather clock, like my grief is making her late. "He wanted peace. You being here does not bring peace." She pushes the door wider and steps back. I step inside on instinct, on memory, like my feet still know the grooves in the floor where I learned to walk. The air smells like lemon polish, not lilies, not him. The photos in the hallway are rearranged. The ones with my mother are missing. "Don't," Vivian says, and her voice hardens. "You can roll the boxes out, but you can't go wandering. I've already inventoried the valuables." "Valuables," I say, and my laugh sounds wrong. "You mean his life?" She tilts her head. "I mean the estate." Something small in me snaps, but I keep my voice level. "There's no reason to be cruel." "Cruel?" She blinks, almost amused. "Cruel is leaving a man with a failing heart to be coddled by a daughter who never finished college." The words hit like open palm. "Let's not pretend you were his nurse. You were his delay." I could throw the soup at the wall. I could scream. Instead, I breathe until I feel the floor under my shoes again. Where are the things from my room? In the boxes, she says. Anything not in the boxes is not yours. I roll the first one toward the door. Something rattles, a snow globe from the seaside fair, the one my father bought when I was 9. The water inside has turned cloudy. The tiny house leans in a blizzard that never settles. I close my hand around it until my knuckles ache. Keys and remotes, she says, holding out a porcelain dish like she's hosting. Leave them. I put the car fob in the dish, the house key that no longer fits, the remote to the garage I'm no longer allowed to enter. One by one, I set them down and feel pieces of my life click out of place. When I've hauled the last box to the porch, she stands in the doorway, still blocking the threshold like a sentry. You have a week to collect anything you've forgotten, she says. After that, I'll assume abandonment. Abandonment. I taste the word. Is that what you call it? She closes the door. The new lock slides home with a clean, final sound. I sit on the top step with the boxes at my knees and the snow globe in my lap. The street is too bright, too ordinary. A neighbor waves and pretends not to notice the wreckage of my life stacked on the porch. When I finally stand, I catch the attic window in the corner of my eye, the little half-moon pane where my father used to tap twice to tell me goodnight when he worked late. The curtain doesn't move, but something in me does. She thinks she's locked me out. She thinks the word mine is a spell that makes truth. But houses remember. So do daughters. I lift the lightest box and carry it to the car. I leave the snow globe on the seat beside me, tilting the glass until the flakes rise and fall like a storm I can control. She took the keys, she took the locks. She didn't take the past, and she didn't take what my father hid from me. I come back after midnight, when the street is empty and the neighbors' porch lights blink out one by one. Vivian gave me a week to collect what I've forgotten, but I don't feel like asking her permission to remember my own life. The side gate still sticks on humid nights. I lift, push, and it gives with the same tired sigh it has since I was 12. The kitchen window latch never sat right after one winter storm. I slide a putty knife under the frame, and the lock pops like a knuckle. The house smells like lemon cleaner and something colder, glass and metal and money. I move through rooms by muscle memory, not turning on lights. Every picture in the hall has been straightened within an inch of its life. The gaps where my mother's photos hung look like pulled teeth. I don't stop. I head for the narrow staircase at the end of the corridor, the one that leads to the small door tucked under the eave. The attic has always been mine. When I was little, Dad would tap twice on the half-moon window to say goodnight if he worked late. 2 quick knocks that meant, I see you. I'm here. I put my palm to the peeling paint now like it can knock back. The attic door sticks, then opens with a dry scrape. Heat blooms up, dust rising in a soft breath. I click on the pull string bulb and the light hums to life. Weak, yellow, enough. Boxes, old suitcases, the cedar wardrobe that still smells like Christmas. And against the far wall, where the rafters lean in close, sits a chest I don't recognize. Low, solid, oak banded with dull brass. It looks like it has waited a long time. My stomach tightens. I kneel and brush a sleeve over the lid. A thin film clears to reveal a hairline keyhole in the front clasp. No combination, no latch, just a small stubborn mouth that won't open for hands alone. I press on the lid anyway. It doesn't budge. There's a tag nailed to the back rail, the kind movers use. Blank. I run my fingers along the underside, following the grain. Something rasps. Tape. I peel it carefully, and a small square of paper comes away with it, browned at the edges, my name in my father's slanted hand. For you, when the time is right. My breath sticks. The attic goes quiet in a new way, like the house is holding still to listen. I read the note again, even though I don't have to. I can hear his voice inside the words. Okay, I whisper. I'm here. I tug the brass banding. The chest gives me nothing. I try a flathead from Dad's old tackle box, then a bobby pin from my hair. No use. The keyhole waits, patient, certain. I could drag the chest downstairs, but the wood is dense and the staircase is narrow. If I scrape it, Vivian will notice. If I leave it in my car, she'll notice faster. This has to stay hidden, here, where the house still remembers me. I lift the cedar wardrobe's door, wedge it open to cast a shadow over the chest, then pull an old quilt and a broken lampshade in front of it. From the bulb's angle, it looks like nothing more than a pile of forgotten things. I take photos anyway. Angles, corners, the tiny scratch above the keyhole, the seam where the back rail meets the floor. Proof that it exists. Proof it's waiting. On my way out, I pause by the half-moon window. The glass is cool. The yard below is black and ordinary. I tap twice, very softly. It's a silly thing, a child's code, but the sound steadies me. Downstairs, I leave no fingerprint where there wasn't already one. I slide the kitchen window shut until it kisses the latch. The gate protests, then closes with the same tired sigh. In the car, I set Dad's note on the passenger seat. The paper is thin, almost translucent when the dashboard light hits it. For you, when the time is right. The right time isn't a date, it's a key, and tomorrow I start looking. The chest haunted me. I couldn't stop seeing it in my mind. The oak, the brass bands, my father's handwriting on that note. For you, when the time is right. But without a key, it was just a box, a silent dare. I tore through every box of belongings Vivian had dumped on the porch. Old notebooks, clothes that still smelled faintly of my childhood bedroom, a stack of bills. Nothing. I almost gave up. Almost. Then, while flipping through my father's favorite book, a weathered copy of Great Expectations, something fell out. A small brass key, dulled by time, taped to the inside of the back cover. My heart stuttered. I turned it over in my hand, studying the ridges. The size, the shape. It matched the keyhole in the chest. My father had hidden it in plain sight, trusting I would be the one to find it. I drove back to the house that night, pulse racing, headlights off as I coasted up the street. The kitchen window gave again with the putty knife. The attic stairs creaked like old bones, but when I reached the chest, it felt like the air itself was holding still. The key slid in smoothly. I held my breath as it turned. The lock clicked, a sound that felt like thunder inside my chest. I lifted the lid. Inside were layers, envelopes bound with string, folders with my father's handwriting on the tabs, a leather journal so worn it looked as if he'd carried it for years. The smell of cedar and ink rose up like ghosts. I pulled out the first envelope, my name on the front. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single page written in my father's hand. If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and she has taken what isn't hers. Don't let her erase you. Don't let her erase me. I pressed the page to my chest, my throat closing. For the first time since he died, I felt him with me again. Not in memory, but in action. He had left me a weapon. Vivian thought she had buried him and locked me out. She had no idea he had left me the key, and I wasn't going to waste it. The chest wasn't treasure, it was testimony. Inside, bundled with twine and marked in my father's steady hand, were letters. Some folded neatly in envelopes, some written hastily on scraps of hotel stationery or lined yellow pads. My father was a meticulous man, but these pages were raw. Fragments of his voice spilled in ink. I unfolded the first one. Vivian tells me she loves me, but I see calculation in her eyes. She watches the house like a hawk, circling what isn't hers yet. The next was worse. She insists I rewrite the will, says it's only fair. She's my wife now. But fairness and love don't sound the same when she speaks. I feel more like a prize she's already won. My pulse thudded as I read on. Page after page of doubts, observations, fears he never shared aloud. Notes about arguments over money, her sudden interest in his health insurance, her temper when he refused to sign certain documents. One letter made my hands shake. If anything happens to me, if I go faster than the doctors predict, I don't want her to control everything. I need you, my daughter, to remember that my love for you cannot be erased. I am hiding this here because I don't trust her to let you have the truth." I pressed my forehead against the paper, my father's words blurring into my tears. He knew. He had seen her for what she was and left me breadcrumbs. I stacked the letters carefully, building a tower of evidence against the woman who had thrown me out. Every envelope, every page, every line was another crack in the story she told the world, that she was the grieving widow, the rightful heir, the victim of fate. But in this attic, the truth lived on. At the bottom of the bundle, tucked between two folders, I found something heavier. A sealed envelope marked in thick black ink. Last Will and Testament. My breath caught. My hands shook as I touched the edges. This wasn't just memory. This wasn't just doubt scribbled in private. This was power. I slid the envelope back into the chest for now, heart pounding. Vivian thought she had already won. She thought my father's legacy was hers to flaunt and spend, but she didn't know about the letters, and she didn't know about this will. I closed the chest and slid the key back into my pocket, the weight of it grounding me. For the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. I held the envelope like it might burn me. Last Will and Testament. Those 4 words carried the weight of everything Vivian thought she owned, everything she had stolen. For a moment, I was afraid to open it, afraid it would say nothing different than the version she had already paraded around, afraid it would confirm that my father had left me behind after all. But my father wasn't a man of accidents. If he'd hidden this in the chest, it was because it mattered. I broke the seal. The paper inside was thick, formal, the kind lawyers use. My father's signature was clear at the bottom, along with that of his lawyer and 2 witnesses. The date was recent, just weeks before his death, and the contents, the house, the land, the investments, the family business, all of it left to me, his daughter, not Vivian, not the woman who had slid into his life in his final years and wrapped herself around his fortune like ivy choking a tree. It was mine. Tears blurred the words as I read them again and again, but they weren't tears of grief this time. They were something else. Relief, vindication, fury that hardened into resolve. Vivian had waved her version of the will like a crown, sneering as she threw me out, telling me the house was hers, the estate was hers, that I was nothing. But she didn't know about this, and she never would, unless I wanted her to, because holding this will was one thing, using it was another. If I showed it now, she'd fight. She'd claim it was forged. She'd try to bury me in court the way she buried my father in the ground. But if I waited, if I let her grow arrogant, let her push further, let her reveal her greed in front of others, then the will wouldn't just expose her, it would destroy her. I folded the papers back into their envelope, tucked them between the letters, and lowered the chest lid with shaking hands. For the first time since he died, I felt my father at my back, not as a memory, but as a shield. He had trusted me with this. He had trusted me to finish what he couldn't. I slipped the key onto a chain and wore it around my neck, hidden under my shirt. The metal pressed against my skin like a promise. Vivian thought she had the law, the house, the power. But I had the truth. And truth, when you time it right, is the sharpest weapon of all. I told no one about the chest. Not the letters, not the key around my neck, not the will folded carefully back into its envelope. Some truths are safest in silence until the moment they need to be heard. For now, I let Vivian believe she had broken me. I rented a room above a laundromat on the other side of town. The wallpaper peeled in strips, the heater clanged all night, and the smell of detergent clung to my clothes. But it gave me cover. To her, I was gone, forgotten. One afternoon, I returned to the neighborhood for the last of my things. Boxes I hadn't managed to carry sat by the garage, rain-stained and sagging. I crouched to salvage what I could when I heard voices, Vivian's, sharp and commanding, and another woman's, lower, a realtor's. I want it sold quickly. Vivian said. Her heels clicked against the driveway like gavel strikes. The house, the land, all of it. Cash offers only. I don't care about sentimental value. She'll have nothing to contest once it's gone. The realtor hesitated. But your stepdaughter. Stepdaughter, Vivian snapped. She's no one. A leech. My husband gave me everything. She'll see soon enough. I pressed my back against the garage door, my hands gripping a soggy box until the cardboard tore. Heat flushed through me, rage so sharp it felt like lightning under my skin. She wasn't just stealing, she was erasing me. I leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. Vivian lowered her voice. I've already made arrangements with the bank. Once the paperwork clears, she won't even have grounds to claim she existed in this house. The realtor murmured agreement. Footsteps receded, and a car door slammed. I exhaled, shaky, my body trembling with fury. She thought she was clever. She thought she could sell the walls that held my childhood laughter, the roof under which my father had died, and pocket the pieces of our lives like loose change. But she didn't know what I held. The letters, the will, proof that my father had seen her for what she was. I walked back to my car, water dripping from the box in my arms, and looked once more at the attic window where the chest waited. Vivian thought she was finishing the story, but the ending was mine to write. I didn't plan it. I never planned most of the moments that mattered. They just arrived, sharp and sudden, and I either broke under them or sharpened myself against them. It was late afternoon when I saw her outside the house, standing at the mailbox in a silk blouse far too fine for yard work. She flipped through envelopes like they were playing cards, lips curling at anything that didn't look like a check. I should have walked past, but the weight of the key against my chest reminded me that I had stopped being a bystander the moment I opened that chest. "Planning your next purchase?" I asked, my voice steady. Vivian startled, then recovered, slipping her sunglasses higher on her nose. "Oh, it's you. Thought you'd crawled off for good." I forced a smile. "I've been busy, going through some of Dad's things." Her eyes narrowed. "His things are my things." I tilted my head. "Not all of them." The way her face flickered, just for a second, told me I had struck something raw. She snapped the mailbox shut and crossed her arms. "Don't play games you can't win, girl. The law is on my side." "Is it?" I let the question hang, light as a feather, but sharp enough to cut. Funny thing about the law, it only cares about what's written down, what's signed, what's dated. Her jaw tightened. "Whatever scraps you think you found, no court in the world will believe you over me. You're just the grieving daughter, clinging to ghosts. I am the wife. I am the widow. Everything he had is mine by right." I stepped closer until I could see my own reflection in her glasses. "You sound awfully nervous for someone so certain." She laughed, a brittle sound that cracked at the edges. "Nervous? Don't flatter yourself. You're powerless. And when this house sells, you'll have nothing, not even memories." I wanted to scream, to rip the glasses off her face, to shove the truth in her hands and watch her choke on it. But instead, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that unsettled her more than anger ever could. "You keep telling yourself that," I said, "but one day soon, you're going to choke on the truth. And when you do, I'll be the one handing it to you." Her lips parted, but no words came. I turned and walked away, the sound of my footsteps steady against the pavement. Behind me, I could feel her watching, wondering, and for the first time, I knew she was afraid. I thought I was alone. That's what Vivian wanted me to believe. Isolated, small, powerless. But my father hadn't left me without allies. The call came on a Tuesday morning. My phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize, the kind you almost let go to voicemail. Something made me answer. "Is this Claire?" The voice was male, rough around the edges like gravel rolled in whiskey. "Yes," I said cautiously. "This is David Rowe, your father's lawyer." I froze. I remembered him from my childhood. Stern, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, always shaking my father's hand like it meant something. "I wanted to speak with you sooner," he said, lowering his voice, "but Vivian made things difficult." Of course she had. "I can't say much over the phone," he continued, "but I knew your father well. He wasn't careless. He wouldn't have left you with nothing, not unless—" His voice trailed off, heavy with suspicion. "Unless someone had interfered." I closed my eyes. "He didn't. He left me something." Silence on the line, then carefully, "A will?" My hand tightened on the phone. "Yes." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. "Then we need to talk, quietly. Vivian has been aggressive. She rushed probate faster than I thought possible. I suspected she had another document, but if you have what I think you do—" "She'll deny it," I interrupted. "She'll say it's forged." "She can say what she likes," he replied, "but your father signed everything through me. If you have his final testament, I can vouch for it. I kept records, dates, drafts, correspondence. I couldn't stop her from manipulating, but I can prove what's real." Hope flickered in my chest. For weeks, I had been carrying the weight of the chest alone. Now, here was someone who believed me. "Meet me," he said, "tomorrow. My office, 9 a.m. Don't tell anyone, not even friends. If Vivian suspects—" "She already suspects," I said bitterly. "Then let her. The more confident she feels, the harder she'll fall." When the call ended, I sat in the laundromat room with the buzzing heater and stared at the brass key hanging under my shirt. For the first time since my father's death, I felt the faintest crack of light pushing through the darkness. Vivian thought she'd won. She thought she had silenced everyone. But my father had left me more than memories. He had left me allies, waiting in the shadows, and together we were going to bring her down. I realized quickly that the easiest way to deal with Vivian was to let her believe she had won. People like her thrive on victory, on watching others bend. So I gave her what she wanted, or at least I let her think I did. I stopped showing up at the house. I stopped arguing when her name was printed on every letter, every bank notice, every deed. I let her gloat at the neighbors, spinning the story that I had moved on and accepted reality. She needed me to look small, so I let her see me small. But behind closed doors, I was cataloging everything. Each letter from my father, each line in his journal, each signature on the will. I scanned, photographed, stored them in folders labeled as homework assignments and grocery lists. I made copies on a flash drive I kept hidden in my shoe. The originals stayed locked in the chest under the attic shadows, but the evidence lived everywhere I went. I remembered something my father used to tell me when I was little. "Don't show all your cards, Claire. Keep one or two close to your chest. Let them think they've beaten you until it's too late." That became my mantra. Vivian paraded through the neighborhood, dressed in black silk one day, ivory cashmere the next, hosting tea in the very kitchen where my father once sat in worn flannel shirts. Guests came and went, praising her resilience, her poise, her strength. She basked in it. Every smile, every nod of approval made her stand taller, louder, crueler. And I stayed silent. I could feel her eyes on me when we crossed paths at the store or on the street. The way her lips curled as if to say, "Look at you, nothing." I would lower my gaze, let her think she'd reduced me to ashes. But inside, I was patient, waiting. I wanted her arrogance to grow. I wanted her to believe she was untouchable, so when the ground gave out beneath her, the fall would be spectacular. By the time the family gathering arrived, the dinner where she planned to announce her sale of the estate, I had already rehearsed every detail. Not just how I'd present the will, but how I'd stand, how I'd breathe, the exact moment I would let her see that she hadn't broken me at all. Let her laugh, let her mock, let her believe she'd erased me, because the higher she climbed, the easier it would be to push. And this time, I wasn't going to miss. The invitation arrived in thick ivory paper with gold trim, as if grief could be disguised with opulence. Vivian called it a family dinner, though I knew what it really was, a performance, a chance to flaunt her victory in front of anyone who still carried a shadow of doubt. I considered ignoring it, but then I thought of my father, of the letters in his hand, of the will folded neatly back into its envelope. He hadn't raised me to run, so I went. The house looked different now. Lights blazed in every window, candles flickered on every surface, polished silver gleamed like weapons at each place setting. Vivian moved through the dining room like a queen at court. Her dress was dark emerald, cut to flatter, dripping with jewelry my father once saved for anniversaries. She laughed loudly, touched shoulders, filled glasses before they emptied. The others played their parts well. Cousins, distant relatives, neighbors, all of them nodding, agreeing, congratulating her on her strength and resilience. No one mentioned me until I stepped through the doorway. The room hushed just enough to be noticeable. Vivian turned, her lips curving in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Claire, how nice you could join us." I gave her a polite nod and slid into my seat at the far end of the table. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Dinner unfolded like theater. Vivian told stories about my father, always with herself at the center. She claimed he had always intended for her to carry the family's future. She spoke of plans for the house, the land, her commitment to honoring his legacy. Every word tasted like ash, but I held my tongue. I let her build the tower higher, brick by brick, arrogance by arrogance. She noticed my silence, of course. She mistook it for weakness. "Claire has been so gracious," she said suddenly, her eyes sliding toward me. "She understands this house isn't hers anymore. She's moving forward." Laughter trickled around the table, brittle and false. I kept my face still. My fingers brushed the chain around my neck, the brass key pressing into my skin like a reminder. I wanted to slam the will onto the table right then, to watch her choke on her lies. But it wasn't time. Not yet. Instead, I raised my glass and smiled. "Yes," I said softly, "I understand more than you think." Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. She thought she was the only one holding a secret. She thought the applause around the table was victory. But I had patience. I had proof. And soon the performance would end. The dinner dragged on with Vivian at its center, her voice rising and falling like a conductor leading an orchestra of sycophants. I sat at the far end of the table, silent, watching her bask in the glow of her own lies. She toasted herself more than once, her resilience, her sacrifice, her unwavering devotion to my father's memory. Each word twisted like glass in my chest, but I stayed quiet. I let the arrogance swell, let it consume the room. When the dessert plates were cleared, I rose. My chair scraped the polished floor, loud enough to pull every gaze toward me. Vivian's smile faltered, then snapped back into place. "Claire," she said sweetly, "you're not leaving so soon, are you? We were just about to—" "I have something to share," I interrupted. My voice was calm, steady, even though my heart pounded against my ribs. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. The weight of it seemed to shift the air in the room. I set it gently on the tablecloth, directly in front of her. "This," I said, "is my father's will." For the first time all night, no one spoke. Forks froze midair. Eyes widened. Vivian's hand twitched toward the envelope, then stopped. She laughed, a brittle sound. "Oh, darling, we've all seen the will. It leaves everything to me." I slid the papers free, spreading them across the table. My father's handwriting, his signature, the witnesses, it all lay bare under the chandelier light. Not this one. Whispers rippled around the table. Vivian's eyes darted across the pages, her face draining of color. "This is dated just weeks before his death," I continued, "and it names me as the sole heir. The house, the land, the accounts, everything." Someone gasped. A cousin muttered, "I knew it." Vivian's jaw tightened. She straightened her shoulders, forcing a smile that looked more like a snarl. "Forgery, that's all this is. She's desperate, clinging to scraps. You all know me. You know him. He would never. But her voice wavered. For the first time since the funeral, I saw fear crack through her mask. I leaned closer, my eyes locked on hers. You told everyone I had nothing, that I was no one, but he didn't see me that way. And now, neither will anyone else. The room buzzed with murmurs, the tide shifting against her. Vivian tried to laugh again, but it caught in her throat. She was losing control, and she knew it. I gathered the will, sliding it back into the envelope, my hands steady. The performance was over, and for the first time, I was the one holding the stage. I expected denial, I expected outrage, but what I didn't expect was the slip. Vivian's mask cracked under the weight of the whispers circling the room. She leaned forward, her voice low and trembling with fury. You think this is clever? You think a piece of paper makes you stronger than me? I stayed silent, holding her gaze. Her hand clenched the stem of her wineglass until I thought it might shatter. Do you really believe you're the first one to wave that will in my face? I knew about it. I knew. He thought he was clever, scribbling his doubts in notebooks, hiding things in corners like a guilty child. He rewrote everything because of you, because he couldn't cut the cord to his precious daughter. The room gasped. Her own words betrayed her. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she no longer cared. I searched for it, she hissed, her voice rising. Every drawer, every closet. I tore this house apart, but he hid it too well. And now you think it's your weapon? No, Claire, it's a mistake, a trick. No one will believe it's real. Her laugh was brittle, desperate, but the room wasn't laughing with her. I could feel the shift. Family, neighbors, acquaintances, people who had once nodded politely at her stories, were now leaning away, their eyes sharp, suspicious. I let the silence stretch, let her own words hang in the air like a noose. Then I spoke, my voice calm and deliberate. You just admitted you knew about it. You admitted you tried to destroy it. Do you realize what you've just said in front of all these people? Her face blanched, but she quickly tried to recover. Twisting my words won't save you. You've always been nothing. He pitied you. That's why he left you scraps of comfort. But the cracks had widened, and the audience wasn't hers anymore. I sat back down slowly, folding my hands in my lap. I didn't need to argue. She had already done the work for me. Vivian thought she was cutting me down, stripping me of power. What she didn't see was that every furious word she spat was another brick falling out of the wall she had built around herself. By the time dessert was served, no one at that table looked at her the same way. The performance was over, and the downfall had begun. The air in the dining room was thick, buzzing with whispers after Vivian's outburst. She sat rigid, eyes darting around the table, searching for support, but the approval she was used to bathing in had evaporated. What was left was suspicion. I didn't have to say a word. That's when David Rowe, my father's lawyer, rose from his chair. I hadn't expected him to come. He was family by loyalty, not by blood, but he had accepted Vivian's invitation and sat quietly through dinner, watching. Now he set his napkin down with deliberate calm and spoke. I can confirm what Claire has presented tonight. The will she holds is valid. I witnessed your father sign it. The silence that followed was absolute. Vivian's face drained of color. David reached into his briefcase and pulled out a slim folder. I have kept records of every draft your father prepared in his final year. Correspondence, dates, his explicit instructions. He was clear. This estate was to go to his daughter. He laid the papers on the table, copies of emails, handwritten notes, and even a video message burned to a disk. My father, alive and frail, his voice steady despite his illness. If you are seeing this, then my wife has contested my wishes. My final will leaves my estate to my daughter, Claire. It is my decision, and mine alone. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone muttered a prayer. Vivian shook her head violently. No, this is staged. This is manipulation. You're conspiring with her. But the damage was done. Her denial sounded shrill, empty, desperate. I sat back, my heart pounding, but my face calm. This was the moment I had been waiting for, when it wasn't just me against her lies, it was her against the truth, spoken in my father's own voice. David continued, unflinching. I also have documentation showing attempts at alteration, drafts pushed by Vivian, rejected by your father. He resisted her pressure. He came to me privately, fearful she would find ways to erase Claire's name. He made me promise to preserve his intent. I stared at the video still frame of my father's face on the screen. His eyes were tired, but there was fire there too. He had known. He had seen through her. Vivian slammed her hands on the table, rising so suddenly her chair toppled behind her. This is a conspiracy. You're all against me. But her words rang hollow. No one moved to comfort her. No one believed her anymore. She wasn't the grieving widow now. She was exposed, greedy, furious, undone. And I didn't need to fight her. My father had already done it for me. Vivian's voice rose, sharp and unsteady, bouncing off the dining room walls. She tried to shout over the murmurs, tried to claw back control with the same venom that once kept everyone in line. But something had changed. The room no longer belonged to her. Relatives who once smiled at her stories now stared at their plates. Neighbors who had praised her strength just hours ago leaned back in their chairs, arms crossed. Even her closest confidants avoided her gaze, unwilling to catch the spray of her fury. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, watching. She pounded her fist against the table, rattling glasses. This is my house. My husband wanted me to have everything. You all know it. But her voice cracked on the last word, desperation bleeding through, and the silence that followed told her everything she needed to know. She was alone. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Her unraveling was louder than any accusation I could have hurled. She turned to me, eyes wild. You think this makes you stronger? You think a few scraps of paper can change the truth? Her words came out in a hiss, spittle at the corners of her mouth. The truth was already changed. One of the cousins stood and quietly excused himself. Then another. Chairs scraped, feet shuffled, conversations hushed. They weren't leaving for me. They were leaving her. They didn't want to be near the collapse, didn't want to be caught when the dust settled. Vivian's face twisted as she realized she was losing not just her power, but her audience. Without their belief, she was nothing more than a woman screaming at ghosts. Her hand shook as she reached for her wine glass. The emerald sleeve of her dress shimmered under the chandelier, but she looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Cornered, weak. You'll regret this, she whispered, but it wasn't a threat anymore. It was a plea. I rose slowly, the key under my blouse pressing against my skin like a reminder. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply turned and walked out, leaving her behind in the ruins of her own arrogance. The last sound I heard before the door closed was the shatter of glass as she threw her wine at the wall. The queen of the house was crumbling, and I had barely lifted a finger. The weeks that followed moved like a slow tide, quiet, steady, inevitable. After that dinner, Vivian tried to regroup. She made calls, pressed her allies, begged the neighbors to believe her side of the story. But the whispers had already spread. People no longer saw her as the grieving widow. They saw her as the schemer who tried to erase a daughter. The lawyer, David Rowe, filed the paperwork within days. He submitted the true will, the correspondence, and the video message to the court. Vivian contested it, of course. She stormed into hearings in her tailored suits, dripping in jewelry, trying to convince the judge that everything was forged. But the evidence was undeniable. Dates matched, witnesses signed. The lawyer's records aligned perfectly with the sealed document from the chest. Piece by piece, the walls closed in around her. I attended every hearing. I sat quietly, never interrupting, never rising to Vivian's bait when she threw glares sharp enough to cut glass. I didn't need to fight her in the open. The truth fought for me. When the ruling came, the words felt like thunder rolling through the courtroom. The estate of Robert Ellis is awarded in full to his daughter, Claire Ellis. Vivian's face drained of color. For a moment, I thought she might collapse, but it wasn't over, because alongside the ruling came something else, an investigation, fraud, attempted destruction of legal documents. The court had noticed the discrepancies in her filings, the speed at which she pushed probate, the sudden appearance of a questionable earlier will. David's testimony sealed it. My father had confided in him about her pressure, her attempts to manipulate. Vivian left the courthouse that day, surrounded not by supporters, but by officers asking questions. The last image I saw was her emerald heels clacking against the marble floor as she tried to outpace the reality she couldn't escape. Justice doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with paperwork, signatures, quiet voices echoing in wood-paneled rooms, but in its own way, it is louder than any scream. When I walked out into the sunlight, clutching the documents that proved the estate was mine, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, grounded. She had tried to erase me. She had tried to bury my father's truth, and in the end, she buried herself. The first time I put the key into the lock, my hands shook. Not the brass key from my father's book, the legal one, the one the court had returned to me after declaring the estate mine. It slid in cleanly, no resistance, no hesitation, and for the first time since the funeral, the door opened at my touch. The house smelled different. No lemon polish, no heavy perfume hanging in the air, just dust and wood and the faintest trace of the life that used to live here. My father's life. My life. I stood in the foyer for a long time, staring at the staircase where I used to sit, waiting for him to come home from work. I traced my fingers along the grooves in the banister, worn smooth by years of hands. Room by room, I walked through the silence. The living room, where my father read me bedtime stories in a chair that is now covered with a white sheet. The kitchen, where Vivian once held her court, now stripped bare, every cabinet echoing when I closed it. The dining room, the stage where she'd paraded her lies, now nothing but a table and chairs, standing in judgment of her absence. I ended upstairs, in the attic. The chest was still there, hidden under the quilt and broken lampshade, waiting. I pulled it into the light and opened it once more. The letters, the journal, the will, everything my father left me still intact, still whispering his faith in me. I sat on the attic floor with the paper spread around me like a map, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was trespassing. I wasn't sneaking through windows anymore. I wasn't hiding in shadows. This house was mine, and these words were mine too. Grief came then, heavy and raw, the kind I hadn't been able to touch while I was fighting for survival. I let it roll through me, tears hitting the letters like rain. But beneath the grief was something stronger, a sense of homecoming. My father's trust had carried me here, had given me the strength to fight. And now, in the stillness of the attic, I could finally whisper what I hadn't said since the day we buried him. "I'm home, Dad." The rafters didn't answer, but the quiet felt different. Not empty, full. I closed the chest gently, locked it, and slid the brass key back onto the chain around my neck. It no longer felt like a secret weapon. It felt like an heirloom. Vivian had tried to erase me, but the house remembered, and now it was mine to protect. The house is quiet now, not the suffocating quiet of Vivian's rule, not the silence of being locked out, but a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. The walls don't lean away from me anymore. They seem to breathe with me, like they're relieved I've come back. I walk through each room slowly, barefoot, letting the wood cool beneath my steps. I pause in the kitchen where my father used to hum while making tea, and in the study where his glasses still rest on the desk, the arms bent just slightly from years of use. Everything here speaks of him, not in shouts, but in murmurs. For so long, revenge was my fire. It burned so hot it nearly consumed me. Every move I made was about proving her wrong, proving I wasn't invisible, proving that my father's love couldn't be stolen. I thought reclaiming this house would end the ache in my chest. But standing here now, I understand something different. Revenge wasn't the ending. It was the bridge. It carried me across the hollow place Vivian carved into my life. It gave me back my voice. And now that I've crossed, I can leave the fire behind. I climb to the attic one last time. The chest sits open, the letters fanned out on the floor. My father's handwriting. Sharp, deliberate, so very him. I gather them gently, tucking them back into their envelopes, then slide the will into its place at the bottom of the chest. The brass key is warm against my skin. I take it from its chain and set it on top of the letters. I whisper, "Thank you, Dad." The attic is still, but I swear I can feel him here, as if those 2 taps on the window I loved as a child have followed me into adulthood. I see you. I'm here. When I close the chest, it doesn't feel like locking something away. It feels like laying it to rest. Downstairs, the late afternoon light spills through the windows, painting the walls gold. I sit in the living room chair, the one covered in sheets for too long, and I let myself breathe. Truly breathe. Vivian is gone. The lies are gone. What remains is mine. Memory, legacy, truth. And for the first time since my father's death, I feel not like someone who survived a theft, but like someone who has come home. This isn't the story of what she took from me. It's the story of what she couldn't. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and make sure you don't miss the next tale of betrayal and revenge. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? I'd love to hear your thoughts.